Just checking we can bring Madison in. We can
Here we
indeed.
go.
Madison,
Deja vu.
what's going on?
Hi guys, thanks
What's
for having
going
me
on?
back. I
No,
appreciate
Of course.
it's a pleasure.
It's because you're so good at your job. We have to bring you back.
We need to hear these
I love
scoops.
this.
I messaged you straight away after yesterday. As soon as I saw the Demis news, it was all capitals. It was, what am I seeing?
Yeah.
Walk us through it. What's happened? Where did you guys get this info? How did you guys get this scoop? What did the investigation look like? What are the key findings? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was one of those instances where the companies come to us and say, hey, this is embargoed information. It's going to be coming out in about an hour. Here's everything you need to know.
Wow.
So that's how we got it. Nothing too
incredible.
crazy on this one. But, with this AI news cycle, I was like up until 2 a.m. getting embargoes from other AI companies. So that's just kind of how it goes right now. But got the information from Google, and then I immediately, just as I kind of told you guys yesterday, started texting with everyone I know who works at DeepMind, and I've already established relationships with them to get their reaction. And that to me is what's been really interesting, is hearing from people at the company who, obviously, I had already spoken to them. They were not very happy with the direction things had been going in. There's a feeling of low morale because they're now 2 months behind on the latest release of their Gemini 3.5 Pro model. And there's also some people I've spoken with who are deeply upset about the company having a relationship with the US military. Those dynamics are now tenfold higher as of the last 24 hours, because there was a feeling that Demis was a trusted figure who had a seat at the table with leadership at Alphabet as well. And so without him and without any CEO, they didn't replace a CEO, they replaced an SVP. There's a feeling that there's not going to be a voice for some of those employee concerns as much going forward now.
Did they get notified then, like, as the story broke? Was that how it worked? Or was it kind of talked about internally before?
I believe there was a slight delay on the emailing. I'd have to double check the timing. Typically with this type of thing, the email to employees goes out maybe like 10 or 15 minutes before reporters are allowed to break it, but sometimes it's immediate. And I'm not sure for yesterday what it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
What was I mean, you kind of allude to it, but like any sort of key findings that came out that you guys thought were interesting compared to the conversations that, because I'm sure you've been having conversations around this topic, as you mentioned on yesterday's interview already. Was there anything that surprised you? Anything that was that came in addition to what the embargoed release had brought you?
I mean, what's really interesting is that I had sort of been hearing from people that it felt like Demis was not as actively involved in the model development process, right? And we did get that confirmed from this release, that Core I had really been the one on top of this model pipeline. And I think that from Google's perspective, they're kind of using that as evidence that this is not a move that is about, Demis not doing his job or anyone being at fault here. Core I was already the one who was being positioned as the leader on these model releases. So that they're kind of pointing that out to us reporters as evidence that this is not about Demis being behind. And I'm sure you guys have been talking about this throughout the morning, but Demis is a scientist. He always talks about it being his first Nobel Prize and not his last. So, and when I went back and listened to a bunch of our prior interviews with Demis, you can hear so much of that competitive science focus in his ambition. So from that degree, it does make sense narratively, but that's not stopping employees from feeling like they just lost a CEO because they did.
Do you think the like, obviously this news is fresh. Do you feel like the employees might kind of move into a position of like, this is stewardship. This is like, we respect Demis for kind of going to, because a lot of the comments are, we're close to AGI and now I need to focus on the science and kind of remove myself from the day-to-day, things of being a CEO, which, as you mentioned, right, like he's a scientist. He's not necessarily a CEO, right? So like, do you think, as time goes on, like morale might get higher compared to what it is now, considering, it's like a respect thing and
No, I hear you. What I have heard from people is that it feels like it was almost a confirmation that the company is moving in a more commercial direction than a scientific direction, at least from the employees who I have been talking to over the last 24 hours, because for some of them, it feels like Demis was sort of banging the drum on the need to focus on AGI, focus on science, focus on curing cancer. And then their parent company said, okay, let's move you over to the side in a little sandbox where you can go do that. And then we can focus on making money. That's just the feeling from some of the people who I've talked to. Obviously, Google would not agree with that. And they also have talked a lot about how their positioning is just a little bit different in the AI race. They love the fact that their new Gemma flash models are really affordable because, Google is surfacing the most answers to AI questions of any AI company every day through Google search. And so they want access to cheaper and more efficient models. And so they're kind of pitching that they're not behind in the race. They're creating tools, models, products technically that are just better suited for what Google's commercial position is.
Yeah, I hear that. It's kind of like they're more comfortable in the application layer than they would be on that sort of frontier, neck and neck with Anthropic and OpenAI. You mentioned a number of interviews that you've done with Demis in the past, or Axios as a group. I'm sure you have an archive of those, as you mentioned. Do you think that we'll see a new type of Demis coming forward? Do you think that we'll see a more free Demis in a way? Do you think that the bureaucratic reins have kind of come off him a little bit and he can just sort of nestle down into science and all this kind of good stuff?
Well, it is really interesting going back and kind of hearing the little trickles of, again, what we got confirmed yesterday in his prior statements, right? He's been talking about his big focus is this move to AGI, and Demis and DeepMind gave Axios the exclusive on that safety framework that he came out with a couple of weeks ago. Nice. And that was all about his feeling that we are on the edge of AGI. And so we really all need to do something about this, right? That makes a lot of sense in the context of him moving into this new role. The company talked about how he has been on the conference circuit, going to Davos and G7 and all of these different world leader events. I think they could kind of continue to position Demis in that way as sort of like a presidential figure on behalf of Google's AI ambitions, going around and speaking at all of these different events. But he's still part of a public company. So I think that, take it with a grain of salt how much transparency we're going to get from any public company executive. Yesterday, the stock dropped $200 billion in a couple of minutes off of this. So it's always tough to get full transparency from anyone attached to a stock that's critical to the broader market and economy.
Yeah, we thought that was fascinating. We were kind of, because we'd seen a take on the timeline that was basically saying they've essentially quantified how much Demis is worth. In a way, it was like 260 something billion, but it's almost like they've not even quantified him because their phrasing was leaving the company. Like, how much is Demis worth? Because they don't have him anymore. But he's only the comms line is stepped aside to a presidential position. Was there anything that you saw in the conversations, like how much time he wants to now spend on isomorphic labs? Is it 100%? Has he been spending a lot of time there recently? Have you heard anything around this at all?
Because the talks with Sundar have been they said a year, very extended period of time, not just a few weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, and the timeline thing is something that I want to continue to figure out today. So for anyone watching, if you have details, feel free to DM me. But I'm very curious about this coinciding with obviously the news about Jeff Dean starting his own company.
Sure.
Making that as a looped announcement. To your point on the stock drop, it's hard for us to tell how much of that was about Demis, how much of it was about Jeff, how much of it was just executive shakeup at Google. We wrote in our story this morning that this was the biggest AI CEO shakeup since Sam Altman's weekend of being ousted. So this was a very big deal to have this, AI lab have this level of executive shakeup. So I think that that's part of the challenge for the market, is figuring that out. When it comes to your question, though, on how much time he's going to be spending on the science side. Again, from what people told me who are there, it seems like Demis was already not spending as much time on the technical frontier model capabilities of DeepMind and sort of refocusing himself on what he's passionate about, which is the scientific side, and that this move just sort of formalizes something that had already been in the works. And on the announcement happening of Jeff and Demis on the same day, what I was told is that, to your point, this has been in the works for a long time. And for the company, it was just sort of like, okay, do we do these announcements one day after another, or do we just make the full announcement in one day? I'm curious to find out more information about why that decision was made to make the announcement all at once.
Yeah. We just had, I've only got 1 minute left, I think, but we just had Nick on. Nick is an anonymous profile on X who always talks about AI, does some amazing work. And he said he's a big fan of yours, actually. And he mentioned, why was Jeff Dean not just going to build this internally at Google? Like they have resources, they have the infinite money machine, the ad machine. They can, they have good talent there. Why would they not just, if he was so focused on this, he'd been at Google for 27 years, why not just use the resources at hand there? I'm sure they would have. They invested in his round as well, right? So why would they not just take the whole thing?
He was saying, the fact that it's a public stock and kind of go through all of this bureaucracy, better to just go private and kind of go and do it your own way, I guess, right? Like, which I think, I can see the strategy behind that, I guess.
And you guys, just quickly, we're getting word that our next guest actually isn't, they have to go and increase shareholder value on a different mission. But have you guys looked at the Muse Spark stuff at all? Meta's work recently, we just saw they dropped a coding agent. We saw that they'd also, people are saying that they're now on the felony benchmark because they've had a hack, so they're joining Anthropic and OpenAI with the recent, agents going rogue. Any sort of comments on that at all? Have you guys spoke to anyone at all on the inside?
I just thought it was fascinating, the financial sort of bargain with that model, that if you're willing to let the model train off of your inputs, that it's like basically near free to use. And I think that that's a really interesting sort of value prop. I'm very curious to see if we start to see other companies and AI labs that maybe feel behind in usage using that as a tool. A company like Meta is very well positioned to do that because they have a lot of other cash that they can use at their disposal, so they can kind of eat the compute costs associated with giving people essentially free access to the model if those people agree to sort of a privacy trade-off. So I think that that's a really interesting piece of it, is the cost exchange.
There was also a lot of discourse around, is Google out of the AI race? And strategically, Nick kind of, kind of pointed this out. Like strategically, Zuck kind of mentioned Muse on, a similar kind of timeline. Do you think that was a strategic thing? And do you think, what do you think the future looks like for Google in, this kind of frontier model space? I think Gemini 4 is maybe semi-imminent, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of their shareholders hope that it's semi-imminent because we're, again, 2 months behind, right? I think Google and Meta are two really interesting ones to compare because they're the big public company behemoths, both hyperscalers who have their own massive compute ambitions. There was that amazing FT piece about Google's chip business, $200 billion this week, right? They're working with Anthropic to provide compute too. So that's also an interesting piece with Google, is like the coopetition with other AI companies. But Google went free cash flow negative this quarter. Meta is still positive. So I think that that's an interesting comparison point. Meta stayed somewhat responsible with their capex. They kept their estimates to, I believe, 130 to 145 billion, which was still crazy to investors, and we saw a negative reaction. But they didn't raise the estimate, so maybe it is getting through that they need to be careful about their spending spree. But I think that those are two really good comps in this industry to see how they deploy the cash that they do have on the balance sheet to try and get ahead in the AI race, and to your point, what Google does to try and come up with profitable AI products going forward.
Yeah. I think it was super interesting, all the takes on the timeline saying, like being like, wow, like Muse is here. This is really exciting. What do you think the kind of future looks for? Well, it's not back. It's here, which is all right.
Zuck is back on the timeline.
Yeah, Zuck's back on the timeline, which I think is clearly strategic. What do you think the future looks like for Meta? Do you think it now has a real chance to be competing with Anthropic, OpenAI?
I think that the biggest thing that I've learned covering this story for the last year-ish is that they all leapfrog each other constantly. So you can't count anybody out, right? I mean, even Google, I went back and looked. I had a story about how they were the winners of the AI race 6 months ago, and now look at where we are today. So it's these cycles are compressing so much because the technology allows for a lot of innovation in a really short period of time. So I wouldn't be confident saying that Meta is all the way back or that they are losers in the race. I am confident that that's going to change 10 times by the next time that I talk to you guys, you know?
Yeah, agree. Yeah, there was also like comments on saying, you know, Zuck's probably cooking like an open weight model that just kind of blows everything out of the water and really creates a stir, which, you know, could happen. We don't know. We have no idea.
I am cautious. We are running over and we're taking more of your time. So we can leave it there. Because as we always do with great interviews, we always run over, Madison.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
No, it's a pleasure.
Of course.
Welcome back. It's a revolving door. And also we gave you a Scoop of the Quarter award, actually, just before you came on. We saw that post come out.
I appreciate it.
Let's give it up for Madison, guys.
That's great. Everyone in the studio is very happy for you, and we are too. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
See you soon.